Hello, in this video we'll complete the overview of all the tools of MoI. We'll take a look at the Construct Panel, Transform, Sub-D and Dimension. Let's start with the Construct. The first tool is the Boolean. Boolean works for both curves and solids. Let's start from the solids. Let's click on Boolean and you have different options. Difference will subtract one solid to the other. So let's select difference. Select the base object, which means the object you want to keep. So the cube, right click. And object to subtract one or multiple objects or curves. In this case, the sphere. And right click. As you can see, it performed the operation. Union, let's select the two objects and right click. This will simply merge the objects together. As you can see, they are now one single entity. And of course, I can perform other operations such as adding fillets, but we'll take a look at it in a moment. Intersection will only keep the intersecting part, which means the one which is inside. So in this case, I select the cylinder, the cube, and now we only have the inside part. Finally, you have merge, which is a combination of intersect and union. Select objects to merge these two. Done. And now I can still move the cylinder out of my way, but I will retain this inner part for further operations. Like maybe I want some kind of bolt. I can move it here, or I can simply move it out of the way and I have the difference operation. You can also perform Boolean operation using curves. Let me jump to the front view. I will pick the polyline and draw something like this. Right click. I will select the cube, Boolean difference, the curve, right click. Let me delete this curve. And now as you can see, it performed the Boolean operation. You can also use the Boolean operations not only from solids and curves, but curves and curves. So I will select my circle, Boolean difference, this one, and now we have this kind of result here. Let's jump to a fillet. You have two types of fillet, the fillet and the chamfer. Fillet is also, I like to call it bevel because I came from a polygonal background. Select object to fillet. Let's say I want to fillet the edges, so I only select the edges of the intersecting sphere. Right click, and now we can pick the fillet radius. You can pick it by selecting it from the grid. So if I left click on one point of the grid and then move the mouse, as you can see, the radius is changing. So if I left click again, now we have this kind of fillet. It's based on the distance between one point to the other of the grid. Or you can type it manually, like 0.3, enter, and you have the fillet. There are various types of fillets which you can choose from the shape. So the default is a circular. It will take into account the width at various angles and perform the fillet accordingly. So if you have, for example, this part, right now it's all equal more or less, but let's say that you have this part which is smaller than this one, then the fillet will be smaller here and here will be bigger. If you want a constant fillet, you can choose it here and say constant distance. And now, as you can see, it changed and it will average the distance between the surfaces. So you have a constant fillet instead of a bigger fillet in one angle. You also have the various types like G1 blend. Right now it is producing artifacts because obviously it's not the way to go in this case, but it can be useful for certain cases where circular and constant fails. But in general, I always use the circular or the constant. You can also use straight corners and it will make straight fillets. When you are done, you simply click on done or right click. Chamfer will create straight angles. I can either select the whole cube or only certain edges. We did the edges before, so let's select the whole cube. This also works with the fillet. So I selected the whole cube, right click, pick the distance, and now I can chamfer the whole object at once. I can also use straight corners. We have this kind of sci-fi result here. And when you are done, you simply click on done. This also works with curves. So I select this shape here, fillet, select corners or push down to do all. So which means you can either select the corners you want to fillet, like these two, or you simply right click or press down to fillet the whole curve or whole shape. So right click, pick the fillet radius, like this, right click again, and you have the fillet. Let's say you want to repeat the operation, you select the other shape, right click one time, right click the second time, and right click again to confirm. Let's take a look at the offset. Select objects to offset. This will create another curve based on the one you have. So let's say I want an offset of this one. This is similar to the inset of a polygonal tool. So I right click, and now if I move the mouse, I have a similar shape to the original one. And left click to confirm. You can also choose the corners to be sharp or rounded. Now we have rounded corners, more or less. I go to the offset, shell, select objects to shell. This one, right click, pick the thickness. This only works with solids, so not curves. And I will pick the thickness. As you can see, it is adding thickness inside my object. You can choose the direction. Flip, which will add the thickness outside. And center line from the center, which will add the thickness in both directions, outside and inside. Inset will simply inset the faces. Let's say I want to inset this face here. I select it, right click, pick the thickness, and now I have an inset. It's basically like the shell, but it's for insetting instead of adding thickness. You can choose the directions, inwards or outwards, which will extrude it. You can also choose expand, which will expand outside your face, but let's choose inwards and something like this. You have planar, which will fill a face. So I select this one, right click, and now it made this plane. You have extrude. This is self-explanatory, but let's do it in any case. So you can set curves, edges, faces. Let's start from the curves. I select all these curves and right click. Now I can simply drag the mouse to choose the extrusion amount. You can also enable both sides to extrude in both directions. And left click to confirm. So I will extrude it. And as you can see, I can move it up and down. You can also choose keep separate. This will separate the face. So you have another solid to work with. You have some options here. Let's look at the tapered. You can simply extrude and chamfer at the same time. You also have 2 point. This will create a triangle shape. You can also set the direction. Pick first direction point, let's say this. Pick second direction point. And now, as you can see, based on the position of my mouse, I can choose the direction of the extrusion and then the length. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you extrude is that the software will only extrude the inner part between curves. So if I select these two, the center faces will be hollow. I extrude, and as you can see, I only have the space between these two curves that are extruded. All the rest is hollow, so keep this in mind when you work with curves. We have now the revolve and rail revolve. They are similar, but let's start with the revolve. Let curves to revolve, so this one. Right click, pick revolve axis start point, so the point where the revolution will start, my center, the origin. Left click, and then let's pick the axis, and now we have this result. We can also do it with other shapes. Let's use the circle in this case. Pick the revolve axis start point, origin, and then the z-axis, and now we have a torus. Of course, you can always modify it, but if you move it or perform other operations, you can't transform it or manipulate it anymore. The rail revolve is an advanced revolve operation which allows you not only to revolve a curve around one axis, but also to define a profile. In this case, let's say I want to make an umbrella. I made this polygonal shape, this octagon, and also this arc that starts from one point and goes exactly to the center. I choose the rail revolve, select profile curve, which in this case is my arc. And then it says select rail curve, so this one, revolve axis start point, the center, and the direction. And now I have my umbrella. Loft allows you to blend curves together. Select curves to loft, all this one, right click, and we have this shape. A trick, if you want to have a point at the end, you simply add a point like this. Then you choose the loft, all the curves and the point, right click, and now you have these pointy shapes. You have many options: loft style, normal, loose, it's more like soft, and you also have straight, which is like chamfer, so it's more angular. Let's use the normal, which as you can see, it has these little curves. It's not perfectly straight, but also not smooth either. But if I choose loose, it is straight while not angular. You can enable and disable cap ends to have a hole, and then done. Sweep allows you to select a profile like this circle, right click, and extrude it along a rail or a curve. I will select this curve as a rail, right click, and now we have a tube. You have many options. You have a twist, which can be freeform or flat. It will change obviously the direction of your extrusion operation. And regular pointy end, which will end at with a point at the end. Pointy start, same thing but for the start. Both pointy, and you have the strange result. Profiles, automatic, exact will simply replicate this exact profile, but I usually use it on auto. Cap ends, you can enable or disable it if you want the curve to be hollow, and simply done. Then you can use it for also in more creative ways, aside from tubes. Let me select the sweep again, select the profile, this one, right click, the rail, done. And now you have this result here. Let's say you want to make a staircase, something like that. You can use the sweep, profile this one, rail this one, and you have this result. Blend command works on curves and solids. It's your bridge tool, so allows you to fill gaps between two defined edges. Let's say I want to create a tube. I select this edge and this edge, right click, and now I made a bridge between these two. I can play around with the bulge to modify the shape. I can choose tangent G1 or curvature G2. It depends on what you like the most. And then simply press done. And you have your solid, which can be detached. You can also fill gaps between curves instead of using maybe an arc or creating another line. You can use the blend tool. So I will select these two curves, and now automatically it will blend between these two, and I can choose obviously the curvature, and done. N-sided is similar to the planar, but it will create an angle. You must select a closed loop of edges, and it only works with solids. In this case, I have this star. I will select all the edges like this, and then I press on done, and it will fill up the hole. You can always play with the bulge, and when you're done, simply press done. Network will blend multiple curves together in two directions. It's similar to the loft command, but it's more powerful. As you can see here, I have four different kind of curves of different shapes, and two of them are in different directions because these two are circles and are pointing upwards, and these two are simply curves and are pointing in this direction. If I select the network and select all of them, right click, it will blend everything together to create this kind of vase. You have different modes. Normal mode will blend the curves exactly at the control points, so this is the most accurate mode. Lighter is more loose, but you can't really notice. Maybe here you can notice something, but not that much. In any case, this is the network. Curve tool allows you to project, intersect, and do other operations from curves to solid. Let's start with the project. So select object to project, and this curves, right click the target, so the cylinder here, and now as you can see, my curves are projected onto the cylinder. You can choose the direction, closest point, or direction. Usually this one is the most accurate. Let's click on done. For the intersect command, you must have two intersect objects. So I will extrude this one. Let me also delete, and I will select the intersect command, select both objects, right click, and now I have the curve projected onto the surface exactly where the intersection happened. Silhouette is used to generate the silhouette of an object, which means the contour. So I will select this object, right click, and now I have the silhouette. I can change it from here, the view, so 3D, top, front, right. You have many options. This is useful for when you, for example, want to export maybe to a vector program like Illustrator or something like that. The ISO feature allows you to create edges that run along a particular face of an object. So select face, this one, pick a point, and as you can see, it automatically show me the edges that we're going to create. So if I pick a point here, now we have these two edges. If I pick a point here, I also have these other edges, and so on and so forth. Right click to confirm, and now I have these edges, as you can see. Let's take a look at the transform panel. I already explained the main tools to move the object, so I will explain the other one. Copy allows you to copy an object multiple times. For example, my umbrella, I left click on it, right click to confirm, pick the base point, like the center, and then I simply left click where I want the umbrella to be, and it will create multiple copies. And right click to confirm. This is very useful, for example, where you have details like a bolt and you want to copy it multiple times, like for example this object. Let me jump to the front view. I will select the copy, right click, base point, and then I duplicate it on the surface like this. Right click, and then I can do a Boolean operation. and I have Boolean everything. Mirror allows you to mirror objects on one particular axis. In this case, I have this curve. I select it, right click, pick the start point, the center, and I simply rotate it until I'm satisfied with it, left click, and then I join them together, and I have this result. For the array, you have different options: the grid, directional, circular, and curve. Grid allows you to duplicate the object in multiple rows, which you can choose the number of copies here, the X, Y, and Z axis. Let's leave it, let's say 5, 5, and 1. Let's press done. Enter spacing or pixel corners. I will pick the origin and drag the square like this. And now I have my grid array. Directional, easier. You simply select offset, the base point where the operation will start, and you choose the offset by dragging the mouse and left click to confirm. Circular, pick center point, my origin. You can choose the item count, which means the number of copies, the angle, also vertical steps, and you create a staircase effect. And then press done when you are ready. Array on curve, select the object, select the curve, and now you have this result here, which basically follow the curve. Modify the curve a little bit to make it more interesting. Let me jump to the front view, the top view, and I'll make it like this, and you have this result. Align tool allows you to align objects on a straight line, so I select all of this, and you can choose the direction, vertical, horizontal, and so on. It's useful to make them perfectly aligned. Orient allows you to orient object, so I will select this one, the origin, and now I can simply snap it onto other surfaces. This is useful for like detailing screw bolts, adding those kind of objects to your main model and so on. Or if you simply want to align an object to a surface. For the deform tool, you have flow and twist. Flow allows you to deform an object or curve by following another curve. So select object of flow, in this case the text. Right click, select base curve. If you notice, I made this line which touch the text. This is done on purpose because the line should be slightly below your object that you want to deform, because basically MoI will join the text in this case and this line together, and the line will be the one to be deformed and follow the path. So let me do it again. Flow, this one, base curve, I select this one, and then the target curve, so the one I want the text to sit in, this one. And now, as you can see, I have the text onto the surface. For the twist, you select your object, and then you pick the start and end of your twisting operation, and you choose the angle, like this. You can enable the limit to axis to change the value of twisting. For example, right now I have very few twisting going on in the base, but at the top I have a lot of twisting. So let's press done. And that is it for the construct and transform panels. You have dimension. Dimension will simply measure the distance between 2 points. So for the horizontal, you select it, left click on a point, left click on the other point, and drag out your quote. Okay, like this. For the angle, you choose the center point, first dimension and second dimension, and then you drag out your angle 180 degrees, which is correct. For the text, you can add some comments. Press OK, and it is your comment. And that's all for the dimension. The other one are self-explanatory. SubD allows you to load a polygonal mesh and convert it to a NURBS surface. So I will simply left click on create from file and I will load one of my model. It must be in OBJ format. And now, as you can see, MoI is processing the object, which means it is converting it to a NURBS surface. Here we have our object. As you can see, MoI transformed it into a NURBS surface. The result is, well, very good. And you can perform the various operations that you are used to do with solids and other NURBS surfaces. So for example, I will go to the top view, I will pick the line, I'll do something like this, also mirror, and then I will do a Boolean operation, and now I made the Boolean operation. You can like add some details. You can do a lot of stuff. However, be careful because as you can see, the object is hollow inside, so you must take that into consideration. In any case, this is the SubD. It's very straightforward, nothing to say about it. Just to use to bring your polygonal model into MoI and then add details. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If that's the case, leave a like to support the channel, subscribe to stay up to date with the latest contents. If you have any question, comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.